Hey everybody, so today I'll be talking more about sports. In particular, I'll be talking about the Pittsburgh Penguins. Just a change of pace from what I've been doing. Still going to be doing primarily politics, but just to try something different. These videos that I do won't be necessarily on a schedule, they'll just kind of be as I feel. And they're going to be a little bit more low maintenance. I'm not going to edit nearly as much. Not that what I'm doing is really a lot of editing already. But also they'll vary in length. I'll just kind of go on for a bit. Today's will be relatively short, and the general format will be, I'm just going to touch on a few topics, just what's going on in a few sports, and then I'm going to focus in on one topic in particular. In this case, I'll be talking about the Penguins, as I said, who are my favorite team, two-time Stanley Cup champs, and I'll just be talking about what's been going on in their season and what's going and what's coming up with the playoffs starting shortly. So in the Final Four, right now we now know 3 of the 4 teams. Loyola of Chicago is the real story, the Cinderella mid-major team that came out of nowhere, really, 11th seed, and they've made it through. And it's always cool when this happens. I like to see it because I'm a Penn State fan, so I don't really have a dog in the fight in the NCAA tournament usually. So it's fun to see the kind of the teams you wouldn't expect make it through, like Butler and Gonzaga, teams like that in the past. So it'll be interesting to see how they handle the pressure. So far, I mean, they've done pretty amazing, and this is the story about also their team chaplain's a funny one with his sister Jean. So that's a cool story to follow. The next team is Michigan, who, despite the fact I hate Michigan, it doesn't shock me that they made it this far. Having seen in the Big Ten season, none of the Big Ten teams really impressed me that much, other than Michigan State, who lost early, and Michigan. Purdue didn't do much for me, and Ohio State, we beat them 3 times, so obviously I didn't think that much was going to happen there. But Michigan is just struck me as a team that had a lot of options. They could bring off a lot of players off the bench, a lot of different ways to score, and they had good defense, just a very well-rounded team that just knows how to play when it's tournament time. And you need depth in the tournament because, I mean, injuries happen, fatigue happens. It's just a lot you're asking. So that was not a shocking one. Villanova, of course, will surprise no one. They won the title 2 years ago. It's a powerhouse. And always have a soft spot for Villanova, given me being from Pennsylvania and them being a Philly team. Just always like to see them do well. So they'll be definitely a contender. And then Kansas versus Duke will be tipping off any moment now. And again, that's 2 powerhouses. Furthest thing from a Cinderella. So it's always cool to see the good mix. You have, a sleeper team like Michigan, you have your Cinderella, and then you have a couple powerhouses. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes down. So another sport I'll bring up from time to time is soccer. Granted, my 2 teams in terms of Arsenal and the U.S. national team are not doing so well, and my 3rd team, the LA Galaxy, half of them are injured. Although they did just bring in Zlatan, and that's always fun because Zlatan, in my opinion, if not the best personality, at least probably in the top 3 in terms of personalities in all of sports around the world. The guy is just like an enigma. So that'll be a fun one to watch. But right now there's no club soccer really going on outside of MLS and a few other leagues, but primarily not because it's the international break. So nothing really to cover there, but just want to let you guys know soccer videos may come up from time to time. With that in mind, let's move to the main topic, which is the Pittsburgh Penguins and where they're at and what's going on as we're getting close to the playoffs. So far they've had a typical strong season. For those of you that don't know, they are the two-time defending Stanley Cup champions. And they've been kind of, throughout the year, they've had their ups and their downs like every team. Have been far from dominant. Right now, they're second in the division behind the Washington Capitals, who are usually first and finish first, then end up choking in the playoffs. So, no offense, Caps fan, this is just what happens. You know it too. So, they've played well. Their strengths, of course, are going to be in their center, and with Crosby and Malkin, and they bumped that up by getting Derek Brassard in a trade. So, you're not going to be able to match up with them down the center. And then they have other skill guys, your Hornquists and your Kessels. So their offense is loaded. And on the defense, on the top side, they're loaded too, I would say, in terms of Letang and Schultz. But their weakness kind of is the depth in the defense. So they traded away one of their depth defensemen in the Brassard trade, Ian Cole, and now he's in Columbus, another rival. And it's been interesting to see how that's worked out. Matt Hunwick, who is a free agent signing they had, hasn't really panned out much, and he's actually a healthy scratch most of the time now. So every year it seems like this issue comes up. How will the Penguins defense handle, as well as will their goalie be healthy? And it'll be interesting to see if for a third year in a row they can allay that. They're just such a loaded team otherwise, and they're so fast and well coached. They seem to always, when you think they're done, they just pop right back out of the dead. So they're in second place. They just today beat the Flyers in overtime. So the Flyers started the season very, very badly. I remember listening to Philly radio, and everyone wanted to fire their coach Hackstall, and now they went on a run, and they're right there. It's basically the Capitals are at the top of the division. The Penguins are about 3 points back, and then you got I believe it's the Blue Jackets, the Flyers, and the Devils all kind of bunched up. So it's a pretty loaded division, and it'll be interesting to see if all those teams actually make it to the playoffs, because of course on the other side you got your Tampa Bays and teams like that. So it's going to be interesting. And in terms of the setup of how the playoffs is, I personally hate it. I kind of like the 1 versus 8, the first best versus the 8th best, second best versus 7th best team. But the NHL a few years back went to this setup of having kind of a divisional. So, the first place team will play. You have basically the top 3 teams in each division advance. Then you have 2 wild cards, the next 2 best teams out of the conference. So the first place teams could feasibly play a team from the other division, a wild card. But if you're a second place team, you're going to play someone in your division, and then definitely you're in the second round you'll be playing someone most likely from your division, unless a wild card pulls an upset. Which is why you don't see the Penguins and the Capitals the last few years playing in an Eastern Conference final. They're playing in that second round, which has actually oftentimes been a more aesthetically pleasing round, because when those two teams play, it's all out. And then you get a team like Ottawa, who is was a good team last year, but that is more of a kind of, they just muck the game up type of style. And so, in fact, the second round was more exciting than the finals, I would argue, even though that did come down to an overtime goal. So it'll be interesting to see. In the playoffs, I would argue the NHL playoffs are, again, just like nothing else. They are, anybody can beat anybody. It's not like, if you see a 16 playing a 1, an 8 can actually beat a 1. Now, I know this year 16 did actually beat a 1, but it was the first time ever. Whereas 8s can beat 1s and 7s can beat 2s. So, or in this case, 4s can beat 1s. So, it's at another level, I think, in terms of the 4 major sports. That might be my favorite playoffs, because it's like the emotion and the speed and the passions, I think, is pretty unmatched. So from this point on, what are the keys for the Penguins? I think I'm never going to panic with the Penguins right now because, again, they've won 2 in a row. It'd be kind of dopey to panic. Even today, I don't think they played particularly well. When you give up almost 50 shots to the Flyers, it's not really acceptable, but they still won. But the keys, I would say, would boil down to one, Matt Murray, their goalie's got to stay healthy. He's just coming off a concussion, so they got to keep him healthy. It's not like the last few years where they had Fleury and Murray. Now they have Murray. And, I mean, their backups are serviceable, but do you really want to bring those guys into a playoff without the experience? I don't know. But that would be a big key, keeping him healthy. Another thing is just keep the defense, got to keep improving. They're still, even today, we're very sloppy at times. They're all over the map. They're not covering. They're just turning the puck over. They're not getting good clears. So here's hoping that they just got to keep at it, keep improving, and just get serviceable. I mean, ultimately, your depth defenseman is probably not going to win or lose you a Stanley Cup. So it's okay. It's a manageable weakness, but they just got to try and minimize it or cover it as best they can. The next thing is just for the star players, just keep doing what they're doing. And that's been the same for how many years. So in that regard, keep your composure. There was a time back in the early, or like around 2011 or 12, where there was an issue of them losing composure and getting kind of frustrated, and the Flyers will cause that. But honestly, they're outside of Columbus, there aren't a lot of teams like that in the East anymore. Even the Flyers really aren't that kind of team anymore. But just keep your head on straight and keep doing that, and don't get bogged down. People are going to take the cheap shots and everything, and NHL's not really going to do jack shit about it, as we know. There are a few more worthless organizations than the NHL Department of Player Safety, because they really don't do anything. They're inconsistent. They don't follow their own guidelines, and especially in the playoffs. And they're not going to call penalties as much. So just got to go work through it, and they'll be fine. So either way, I mean, I'm at the point when they've won as much as they have, if they slip up this year, I'm not going to be too devastated. But it would be cool to see 3 in a row. And but it'll be tough because, I mean, the Flyers are good now, as much as it pains me to say. The Blue Jackets are a pretty decent team. The Capitals, for all their failures over the playoffs, they still, got Ovechkin. They got guys who knows, maybe this will be their year. So, I mean, and on the other side, Tampa Bay's there. So the East is pretty loaded, and then to get to the West, you have really good teams in the West too. So doing it three in a row would be pretty wild in this day and age. It's just a grind. So we'll see what happens. They've been so lately, but still collecting points and still staying up there. But they haven't clinched yet either, so we'll see what happens after that. So thanks for watching. This, like I said, is a different one. So it's a kind of a sidebar. So there's going to be it's a lot more raw and admittedly not as edited, and there's no type of script or anything. I just start talking and see where it goes. So I hope it's enjoyable, and thanks. Probably do another one of these soon enough. Maybe at some point, if I get my head together, I'll do one on U.S. soccer, Arsenal, in terms of for you soccer fans out there. But it's just too much on the blood pressure right now. All right. Well, thanks, and have a good rest of the weekend.